Hello everyone, welcome back to Grim Dawn. This is going to be a particularly interesting episode because this is really going to expand upon what I was talking about in the previous episode about damage control, damage flow, which is a term I've heard people use to describe it, but really how it's basically describe it however you want. But this is really where, if you haven't had a problem totem like I did in the last episode, this is where you're really going to have to learn that lesson of, okay, I need to manage my incoming damage better. It's not going to be right away. We're actually just going to go ahead and work our way there, but you're going to be able to see this change happening, where you're going to see a large quantity of enemies in very rapid succession, and then it becomes very important for you to understand where enemies are coming from and managing that flow of enemies as another one comes at you and deciding what you're going to do about that group of lunatics. You'll see what I'm talking about in a bit here. It gets pretty hairy pretty quickly. First, let's do a little bit of leveling up. I'd like to hit level 20 beforehand first. Alright, that's kind of random, but sure. Remember these guys really quick, too. I don't know how I missed you, but sure. There we go. Not even a problem. And boo. Nice, level 20. Exactly what I was looking for. No, we don't need to go over there. Alright, we're going to grab our shrine, and then we're going to get into this. Alright, don't need that. Better armor, but those resistances. I don't do pierce. Alright. I want to get to here. But I don't need to get to there now. Uh-huh. Yeah. I suppose I should actually really be changing up some of these. That might be a better idea. Alright, I'm going to do this for two reasons. One, I do want to adjust my constellations. Two, I want to talk to you about Aether Crystals. Now, you can respec, as I showed you before, your skill points. You can also respec your devotion points, as long as you go backwards here. Yeah, that's fine. Now, you'll notice that this costs Aether Crystals. It costs some bits, but mostly Aether Crystals. I have a decent amount right now. I do wish I had more, but that's kind of a side issue right now. We'll actually go with the Wraith here. Eventually, you're going to want these constellations to be permanent. Some of them, that's not really a concern right now. We're pretty low level. But if you're new to the game, you're not going to have the kinds of stores of Aether Crystals that I have access to. So what do? Right? What's the solution, Professor? I need Aether Crystals to respec my constellations. Lo and behold. The Gauntlet. This is where you go from a young Grim Dawner to someone who's been through things. Very quickly, this can get out of hand. If you don't know what you're doing, or you're not prepared for absolute swaths of enemies, if your build is too focused on dealing damage to individual targets, you're going to have a really rough time here. That's just the way it goes. You can see the large groups of enemies building. This is just the very beginning. You can also see how many Aether Crystals are here. This is where you farm them if you need more. This is where you come to get these. At least until you can get your hands on Mammoth, which we'll talk about when we get there later on down the road. But for a decent amount of time with your first character, this is where you'll be farming Aether Crystals. Because this is where they spawn the most, at least until you get too high of a level to do so. If you're really concerned about the number of Aether Crystals that you have access to, it might be a good idea to farm these ahead of time while you're still approximately the correct level for this area. Because if you get too high in level, you don't get Aether Crystals as drops. So you need to do it while your level roughly matches this surrounding area. I believe it's all the way up to like 20... I want to say 25, but it might be slightly higher or slightly lower. It's approximately 25, give or take. Give or take up to 2 levels in either direction. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But if you're in the low 20s, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea to come through here a couple of times, grab some extra Aether Crystals to play around with if you really need to, or if you're really worried about it. Very strong idea. You'll want to go through here once first to see if, obviously, you can handle the flow of enemies that's going to be coming at you. Second, at the end of this area, there's a rift going directly through, you're basically backing into the Gauntlet, which means you spend less time going through the other part of the transit there that I fought the guys in before the shrine. You can avoid that whole part by going through here once, which, again, allows you to assess yourself to see if you actually have the abilities, the kit you need to wipe out these enemies before they wipe out you. This is basically tested to see how well you can deal with large groups of enemies that increase as the fight goes on. Basically is how this area is supposed to work. That was not the best of accurate shots, but alright. Alright. Good enough. Perfect. Come on. There you go. Nothing is yours. Okay. Excellent. I don't know how that zombie didn't get poisoned, but alright. I can't believe I whiffed that hard. That was terrible. Alright. And here we are at the hidden laboratory. Alright. I'm not going to push this any further other than going here and grabbing this and probably killing these bugs because they're going to kill me. Alright. What is this? Oh, any more bugs want to show up? There's an unusually large amount of bugs over here today. Alright. Interesting. Do we have... There we go. Yeah. No, that's what we need. Notice the really delightful armor, the increased resistances. Very nice indeed. Notice we have 23% Aether resist now, which isn't bad. So at this particular point, this area, before I end this episode, I want to talk to you about abilities really quick. We just went through what I call the Gauntlet. This is basically to demand of you one ability that deals damage to large groups of enemies. Pretty soon we're going to be coming up on Warden Krieg. Warden Krieg is going to do two things for you. One, it's going to show you that boss fights are going to some extent be a matter of pattern recognition, of hitting and running, and of not getting slapped. He's the one that's going to teach you that. Second, he is going to demand of you that you have some way of dealing large quantities of damage to a single target very quickly. I have a two-handed weapon with Slael's Witchfire. That's all I'm going to need for this point in the game. It's good enough. That is what this whole area is specifically teaching you. This will become very relevant in the future past this point, past Krieg at least. But I want you to understand that when people talk about builds, not enough people talk about this, and some people get this wrong. Your build should always include one ability, or skill if you prefer the term. I'm going to use skill here just for convenience sake. One skill that deals damage to a large group of enemies, and one skill that deals large amounts of damage to a single enemy. You need an answer for both of these kinds of situations. Always. If I ever drop Eye of Dreeg, I would need to replace it with an ability that damages large groups. Sigil of Consumption is a great example. If I were to drop Slael's Witchfire or change to a single-hand weapon, I would need to change to a high amount of single target damage, such as, say, Doombolt. Okay? You need one solo target high damage ability and one high damage group ability. That's what you're going to need in all of your builds. I do not care who says what on this subject. I will die on that hill. You should have a single target skill, high single target damage, and one skill that does high amounts of damage over a large area or to a large number of enemies. With that being said, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.